I'm Jennifer Gilmour, and I'm an author and advocate for women in abusive relationships. I want to get to the answers to the questions that many have from those that work in the domestic abuse sector, getting an inside feel of what it's really like in their job role and sharing it with all of you.
Right, hi everyone, and welcome to, I think this is the fourth interview that I've done for hashtag Abuse Talk Interviews, and I'm really delighted to have Richard Turner with me today online. We actually met at the Coercive Control Conference in Liverpool back in March, and we got into a really interesting conversation, but I won't give it all away because what's the point in holding an interview otherwise? So, Richard Turner. First of all, I don't want to do too much of an introduction, so literally, this is Richard. And Richard, can you just tell everyone a bit about you and what you do?
Okay, so I'm Richard. Hello. I am a qualified counsellor, and I unknowingly and completely by accident during my counselling training ended up in a cult. I left the cult 3 years ago, and since leaving, I trained as a teacher, specialising in teaching counselling and mental health awareness, and then went on to do a master's in the psychology of coercive control, which I am just approaching the end of the second term in, and I am as of last week set up in private practice, specialising in counselling people who are leaving coercive controlling environments. So that could be cults, or perhaps modern slavery, or domestic abuse. So I also deliver training as well on cult awareness, and hopefully we'll be setting up as a cult exit counsellor, which is quite a rare thing in this country. But basically, that would involve people hiring me, families perhaps, to help me support them getting a relative out of an abusive cult, providing them with information about the psychology of the process of coercive control, and perhaps facilitating interventions, things like that. So, in a nutshell, that's me.
Just in a nutshell, just. Well, we had a really good conversation in Liverpool, and what struck me was the fact that you are tackling the side of cults and offering training programs, etc. But for anybody who needs clarification, and also for the sake of this interview as well, can you actually tell us what a cult is?
So It's a group or movement exhibiting a great or excessive devotion or dedication to some person, idea or thing, and employing unethically manipulative techniques of persuasion and control. So, for example, isolation from former friends and family, debilitation, use of special measures to heighten suggestibility and subservience, powerful group pressure, information management, suspension of individuality or critical judgment, promotion of total dependency on the group, and fear of leaving it, designed to advance the goals of the group's leader to the actual or possible detriment of members, their families, or the community. So it's a group or movement where, when you're part of it, it starts dominating your identity. They are practices that isolate you from people. You're discouraged from giving critical feedback, and basically you get a lot of similarities between like a cult leader as you do with a perpetrator of domestic abuse. So that kind of lots of manipulation, love bombing, also kind of punishments for behaviour that the perpetrator doesn't want, and rewards to reinforce other behaviours. And so basically then with a cult group, it takes over your whole life, and often as well as financial exploitation as well. And all kind of can get to a place where all of your time and energy is devoted to the group. And in some instances, especially people with children, the group even becomes furthering the needs of the group, even takes over the looking after the children as well.
Well, what I found interesting then, though, is that religion, I don't think, was even mentioned. And often, like you said, religious cults are what you initially think of. Even for me, I can think of the headlines of the news, like for a particular Baptist church in America and things like that. But you're saying this can just be a group of people that... So that's really interesting. I wouldn't have thought of that. So thank you for that. Sorry, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, it doesn't. That's a common thing, thinking it's a religious thing, but it can be like a psychotherapy cult, so like a cult that works around like therapy, or it can be like a multi-level marketing company, like a sales company, where people are exploited. Working huge amounts of hours every week, and that taking over spending time with the family and getting paid really low wages because they have to sell a certain amount of product to actually get a decent wage, and then like convincing the salesperson, oh, nothing else matters, you're going to be a millionaire, things like that.
Right.
When it completely starts taking over your life, so it can be even that. So and political groups as well.
That's an interesting one, given the current circumstances. No, well, thank you for that. That helps, and I think it will help people have that understanding of these different groups of people. So, thank you for that explanation. So, you have set up your business, which is called To Think Again. Mm-hmm. What was the initial reason as to why you set up this business?
Well, I think like the experience I had in the group I was in was that devastating, and it had such an impact on me. I got to a place where I couldn't let go of it. It was like it changed me. And so I was reading Steve Hassan's book, Combating Cult Mind Control, and he was talking about cult exit counsellors. And I just realised that there seems to be a need for that in this country. I mean, there's quite a few of them in America, but there isn't really many people doing that in this country. And I really wanted to help people get out of those kind of groups, because it really does rob you completely of your identity and your resources. And it's almost like it dehumanises you being involved in those kind of groups. So it impacted me so badly. I just couldn't do nothing about it. So when I went on to study the Masters in Psychology of Coercive Control to equip me with the knowledge that I needed, and then obviously I was already a trained counsellor, and that's what fueled it really. Just this kind of the devastation. I couldn't just carry on with my life and do something different, because it impacted me that severely. Yeah.
You actually experienced a cult, is that right?
Yeah.
And so sort of looking at that side then, and your experiences, what was it like to enter a cult? I mean, I'm assuming it wasn't obvious, because if everything was like on a label, you would have said, I'm opting out of that. So what was it like to enter that group?
It's like you say, nobody joins a cult. Nobody is aware, nobody sets out to join an abusive group, and often there's a hidden culture to a group, and the more the more you go into the center of it, the more you find out the truth about that hidden culture and hidden teachings, and so they project an image to the outside world to attract members. But it's almost like when you've got to a place where you've committed so much psychologically and financially, it's harder to back out as you find out the truth about the group as you go further in. And not only that, alongside that, not all cults harm everybody all the time. So some of the harm has been done in the centre, but the people on the outskirts don't really realise as much. So when you join, you don't realise the truth about the whole group as a structure in itself. So when I joined, there were warning signs,
Right.
but I kind of rationalised it to cope with that discomfort. So, for example, the very, very first time I went to one of their meetings, the the pastor, because it was a Pentecostal Bible-based cult,
Right.
and the pastor did a teaching about how the church, as it was labelled, wasn't controlling, and it was just because they cared about people. So straight away, I was in one of the first meetings. I was sat there thinking, he's saying that because someone has challenged this group for being controlling.
Right.
So there was a warning there straight away, and there was another warning in that they taught something called the prosperity gospel, which means they taught that if you give us lots of money, God will bless you, and you'll have big breakthroughs in your life, and everything will be amazing. And I'd been warned, having grown up in a Church of England church, about these churches that teach prosperity gospels, and I knew it wasn't right, and I knew it wasn't healthy. But when you're in it, they're playing on your feelings and emotions all the time, telling you how amazing you are. You think these people are your friends, and it's almost like you start to kind of, well, like I said, rationalise it, and then you start changing then. And what was a bit shocking and uncomfortable in the early days, later on becomes totally acceptable as you get kind of sucked in and you start changing, and becoming, the what the cult wants you to be almost. So, as I say, I think if it had known in advance about love bombing, if it had known about, all these different manipulation techniques, I would have probably been on my guard, but I wasn't on my guard. I think because I thought they were my friends. So that's how I kind of like ended up joining. And not only that, because I was raised in an Anglican church, I was familiar with like Christian language. But what cults do is they take language that we regularly use and they change the meaning of it slightly.
Right.
So for example, giving in the context that I came from was, you give to help people, you give to charity, etc. But the word giving changed its meaning when I was in that group. Right. So the word giving became give them, the group, lots of money. And give until you are frightened you're not going to have enough money to even get by. So when I entered, I'd already got all these words in my head, so I accepted them more because I was used to hearing them already. It's just that they had a different meaning in the group, and so when you come out, you have to undo all that and then go back and work through it all again. But so that was part of the reason why I joined, and the other reason was I actually got a job with them as well, and it came through working for their charity as well. So there was a point as I got more and more involved where I was living with them and working for them and attending their meetings, so it started consuming my whole life. So that's how I got into it.
Wow. Well, I think the fact that they were surrounding you completely would certainly not helped. And you mentioned that you noticed, the different preaching and the way they changed the things that meant something else. How long was it before you noticed things weren't right then? Or you said there were warning signs, so you noticed it wasn't right there and then, but you sort of carried on with, attending and being a part of that group of people. But was this an early on that you noticed things weren't right, or was it completely embedded into your life before it, almost like it was a bit too late in a sense?
Yeah, it was. I suppose in the early days, I noticed things straight away, but because there were so many positive things going on, like all the love bombing, and you're amazing, Richard, it's such a blessing to have you here, it gets disguised with all in the middle of lots of positive emotions. And I think I justified it in the early days by saying, nobody's perfect, and there's no perfect church, and everyone's got their weaknesses, and things like that, rationalising it all the time in the early days, because it wasn't taken too much from me then. It was later on when the control started really taking from me, and I think like a lot of people who leave cult, it got to the point where they just went too far with the control. You're to a place where you're thinking there's nothing more important in the world than this group. Like, it's amazing, it's going to change the world, and you naturally get drawn in, and when things aren't going right, you feel like it's you that's in the wrong.
Right.
So you show more commitment to try and fix the problem. So you get even more involved, and it drives you more. And then, like me, I ended up living with them when under the surface I didn't want to, but it was like I was trying to prove myself to the group that I was committed. I mean, like when I was in there, I mean, just to illustrate the kind of thought process that was going on, like I genuinely thought the leaders were prophets, and they had a gift from God, and like they were wise, and that's how everyone talked about them. Oh, the leaders are wise. I allow them to speak into my world. Everyone's saying the same like robotic phrases all the time, and I genuinely believe that they knew something about me, that they could see something in me that I couldn't, that I needed to work out. Like there was something wrong with me. So I've gone away from the original question. What was your original question now?
That's okay, because everything that you are saying sort of expresses the grip that a cult can take on you as a person.
Oh.
You know, so how did you get out of it?
So so basically, like I mentioned before, they went too far, but they'll give you a bit of a view of the journey into leaving. I think that'll kind of I'll give you kind of like a financial thing and then the personal thing.
Yeah.
So I was working for them, and I found that later that they were paying me a much lower wage than they should have been for the job I was doing. So they were underpaying me, and then because they took offerings every week, and they were going and every week they'd be teaching for the offering. So I got to a place where I was giving them money, and I wasn't even questioning the amount of money I was given, and I became like reckless. And they'd have people on stage saying, "Oh, I'm giving £10,000. I'm giving this amount of money." And I heard stories of people giving thousands and thousands of pounds to them. And I got to a place where like I'd hand over a third of my wages without even questioning it, because the problem is with that is psychologically I ended up in a place where it was more important to give them money than pay back my overdraft. So I needed the income to sustain the overdraft, So part of the struggles with leaving was needed the income, and I needed a job, and I didn't have another job to go to. So that was one element going on there. So the journey to leaving started because I got into a relationship with someone in the group, and that's when the control stepped up a notch, and that's when I started realising there was something like grossly wrong with the group. Firstly. So I won't say too much about this person that was with. I'll just say everything from my perspective. But when it was in work time, and I was called into the office of my manager, who was in a position of trust in the cult as well. And when I got with this person, he gave me a talk and basically said that I needed to learn to submit to the leadership and do exactly what they said without question. I wasn't allowed to kiss my girlfriend. I wasn't allowed to sleep in the same building as my girlfriend. He told me that women must learn to submit to men. He told me that if I was ever to marry her, I wasn't allowed to move to where she was because she was the woman. She had to move to me because I was the man. These are all the things that were said to me by someone in leadership in the cult. And so it was made quite clear to me from the beginning that they had the control over this situation, the leadership of the cult, and speaking out. And I was scared of like telling anyone what had happened. And I ended up living with people from the group, and I found out later on this person was overcharging me about £150 a month on the rent on this house share. And so and then there was another time where the senior leader in the cult group asked me to take a 10% pay cut one month because apparently they didn't have any money, or they were going to come under. So like all the time they were just financially bleeding me dry. So I was only just having enough money to get by, really. And it basically felt I just cracked and went off sick. And then someone I knew just said, "It's cult, you need to get out." And so we just left. So that's how I left anyway. They just pushed it too far, and I got so sick I had to just leave. Yeah. Basically, in a nutshell, some people escape from cults Some people are pushed out because they were no longer of use, and some people are rescued by families and for interventions and things like that. But I was just of no longer use and couldn't cope with it anymore, so I left. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, when I left, it meant I had no job. I was sick, like really depressed, and I'd lost my relationship. I had to move back home with my parents, and basically had to start my life again from scratch. And that's when I did the teacher training. Yeah, so yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there might be a few people that are even watching this that are maybe thinking they're in a similar situation, or for anybody who might be, what would you say to them if this is sounding familiar?
I think there are a few things really. If I was hearing me to say this now about me in the past, I would want to be saying to me, I think it's good to go and research the group you're involved in on the internet and find out if anyone's leaving comments about them. Now that can be on like cult forums, or it could just be the newspapers or media may have even done stories on them. And also, like, what cults do is they try and get rid of any negative comments about them on the internet. So my group, they flooded Google reviews to try and push off all the negative reviews. But I would say, don't. It might not. I would encourage people to perhaps not to ignore the few negative reviews out of like 50 positive ones, because sometimes the people who seem like they're in the minority saying that something isn't right are the ones who are right. Now, cults have a lot of people in them who think, and sometimes they think that the group is great. So that's a lot of people who can write a lot of good things. Also, if your group discourages critical thought and critical feedback, and it's always turned back on you, then that's a warning sign something isn't really right. Because it might be people like, oh, you're speaking from fear, or you don't understand the vision, or the leadership know what they're doing, or what do you think, you're a prophet, or all comments like that. It would all be put back on you like there's something wrong with you. So if you're in a group where they never take feedback and you can't sit and have a conversation with them without it being put back on you all the time, and that's probably a warning sign that something isn't right. But also mix with people who aren't part of the group, and share with people who aren't part of the group what's going on, and ask them for feedback on what it's like for them to listen to the stories of your experience as well, and then find your escape route, find your way out. Yeah, and also finally, in that, it feels like when you get out, there's absolutely no hope. Like you're just looking at this emptiness, and I'm sure that parallels a lot with abusive relationships as well. When you get out, it's dominated so much of your life, thinking about this thing or this experience, that you feel like when you get out, you're just looking at nothing. Like there's a void there in your life because your whole life revolved around it. And so like it feels sometimes, I think, like there's no hope. But there is. There's definitely hope, and seek out help as well, and people who understand that. And also, it's good to label it as a cult, because it took me about 8 months, I think, to actually put the cult label on it. And it was only when watching Leah Remini's Scientology and the Aftermath documentaries. Right. Started seeing similarities in behaviours, and I started realising, I was in a cult. This is a cult that I was in. So it's good to do that as well. Look at other cult groups and see if you can identify behaviours that are similar.
If you could look at everything that you've learned so far, then, even though we've got a bit of way to go, what's been something that you have learned from that? About coercive control, and how has it been helpful to you from being in that cult experience as such? So how has that course helped you recognise the signs of that cult?
The I think that one of the well, there's a couple of things that have really been quite significant for me. One of them was you start changing and as a person from manipulation earlier than you think you do. So in the early days of my group, it all felt really good and exciting, but I'd already started changing, and I didn't realise. So I thought all the damage was done in the last 6 months, but the reality was the damage was done as soon as I stepped into that environment, and that's when it all started. The compromising, the rationalising things. You see, because you're hearing it over and over again. The leadership are great, they're wise. You know, you're hearing it over and over again. There's going to be this big breakthrough in your life, and so you're waiting for this breakthrough all the time. That the repetition of the language over and over again starts changing your beliefs, and you don't even realise you're changing. So that was a key thing for me about the coercive control, and the fact that it involves positive feelings as well as negative ones. And I didn't realise that beforehand, but positive feelings play a big part in how you get manipulated, I think. So that's been quite an interesting aspect of that. What was the second part of your question, sorry?
Well, I think you've answered it anyway. We're talking about how your course has helped you to see that control in the cult experience. And also then looking at that course that you're doing, do you think it will be helpful for others? You know, is it useful? Mm-hmm. Would you recommend people do something like this? Because it's unusual really to have a course dedicated to coercive control, and especially the psychology side of it. And obviously we've had the whole law change, which still feels pretty new and feels like everybody is still trying to catch up. So the fact that you're getting educated on something like this is quite something really, and obviously going to be an asset to what you're going to be doing even in now, you know, it's open now, your business. So do you think it's going to be helpful to others and other professions and things like that?
Well, yeah, because what's interesting about the course is that it's psychology of coercive control in any context that coercive control happens in. So we've covered, you know, modern slavery, domestic abuse, cult groups, terrorism, coerced confessions and interrogation, issues about you know, surrounding FGM, covered elder abuse. So it covers anything where that coercion and manipulation is happening. And what's been really good about it is that it's also like normalized my experience. Like I'm not strange. I haven't been, you know, there's not something wrong with me. There are all these people who have experienced these kind of things in lots of different contexts in different ways, and it's kind of therapeutic in that sense, because you connect up with those. What was the second half of your question again? Sorry, you asked. What?
Well, actually, looking at the course and everything, I'll go on to the next point, because this might help other people. I was trying to find out if you think the course is helpful, especially for people in professions or even in the public services. Would you, if you could pick out one thing that you've learned in this course that changed your perception on coercive control, what would that be?
Because one of the struggles when people looking in from the outside, they can't understand why I didn't leave, why people didn't leave a cult, why they didn't leave a relationship. When you start looking at all the psychology of it, it actually makes total sense why someone wouldn't leave.
Right.
You know, we're all vulnerable to being manipulated. If we weren't, then advertising wouldn't work. So I kind of getting that understanding of that what psychologically is going on there, you know, and the fear of leaving, and you know, sometimes there were positive aspects to a relationship, or all those like elements can kind of help people in helping roles show empathy, also help them to I don't know, I suppose you see when all this stuff went on with my group, I told the police about it, And one of the responses was, "Oh, that's religion for you." And I'm like, but if you understand the psychological processes and you would hear the story, you would get what was going on straight away. And so I think it will it'll help. I suppose it might help people to ask more questions.
Yeah.
Like, you know, why the person staying? Is the answer they're giving really what they think, or are they too scared to give the real answer? Have they been coerced into, I don't know, cutting people out of the life, cutting support out? Is that what they really want to do? Did they really want to cut the family out? Did they really want to not give a statement to the police or make a police report? I think having that insight would be very helpful to a lot of people, because I mean, especially in cults as well, there's a lot of victim blaming. Oh, weak-minded people joined the cult. How could they want to be involved in something like that? But it'll definitely help with the victim blaming aspect, because you were recruited into a cult. You don't join one, and you don't join a group that you know to be abusive. They target people and they love bomb people and they seek people out, and they use them. And often as well, the sad thing is especially with cults, and I suppose this happens with relationships, they're looking for people who want to make a difference in the world, or they want to do something good, or they're caring or compassionate, because they want to just, are they successful in some way, or by association it makes the cult group look good. So to use them, and because they're caring, they're easier to use. So they play on that part of the personality through the manipulation. You know, they play on the fact that the person is caring to get them to commit even more. So yeah, I mean, to answer your question, it's useful for empathy, I think, definitely. Yeah.
I really liked what you said about the fact that we're all vulnerable to manipulation, like with the form of advertising. You know, putting it that simple really shows that anybody can become a victim. So I want to talk a bit about the support that you received after coming out of that experience. I mean, did you receive any support, or?
Well, it's quite difficult because obviously I came out of it and I had no money, so I couldn't pay for private practice counselling, which is the difficulty about counselling generally. It's quite hard to try and actually get it. And you end up on a waiting list if you get it for free, or you go to your GP if you get that far. And if you want it soon, then you end up off and always having to go through private practice. But so I couldn't afford the counselling. I did see my GP. They signed me off for a while, and then I got one comment from one person saying, "Well, you need to get your life sorted back out. You need to get back into work." So like the pressure was put on me so much. And I felt terrible then because I didn't have a job for a long time.
Right.
That was quite difficult. I wish I could tell you that the support I got was great, but in a lot of ways it wasn't. And it held me in that trauma for much longer than it really needed to, because I really could have done with counselling straight away.
Yeah.
And it was so difficult because I just don't think I or many other people understood what had happened to me. Just sense of total confusion, because I mean, who's talking about cult groups? In day-to-day conversations, and who can recognise that what's gone on. So often when people leave cults, they're looking around for a counsellor everywhere, like trying to find anybody who understands. But so that was a real struggle. I did teacher training when I left, which was, for the first year, was a nightmare, because I was going in and I was so wrecked. I could hardly do the assignments, but I got through it, and the teacher on that course was amazing and really supportive. So going and enrolling on a college course or something is quite helpful, and also helps with critical thought as well, because obviously when you're in a controlled environment, that critical thought is suppressed, and starts to erode. And so the good thing about education, it starts building up and strengthening the critical thought processes. But it was tough. I jumped into something quite intense straight away, which was quite challenging. But I got support through that tutor. But it took. It's only when I got to university and then got proper counselling did I really get the healing from from the traumatic experience. But the truth is, I don't think anybody understands. I went to another church. I went to another church, and the pastor tried to convince me that was just another style of doing Christianity. And he said, "Oh," and then he didn't. It's like he just couldn't hear me. Now I don't know what the reasons were for that, but it just almost like it's like re-traumatized. It's like there is something wrong with me. Like I'm not seeing, like, because people just, it's like they just don't get it, and in some ways make it worse. So I ended up. It's the recovery process has been quite slow, really, from struggling to get support. But again, if anyone is in that situation, it's really good to look at the International Cultic Studies website. It's got loads of resources and helpful advice and information about cult groups. And also, just 1 second. That's a good book too, which is Margaret Singer's Cults in Our Midst. But a big part of recovering from cults actually is reading about them, because all of a sudden it normalizes your experience and makes you feel left alone, because the cults, the control for isolation and fear and making you think there's something wrong with you, and you're the only one. There's something wrong with you. Everyone else in the group seems really happy and they're all great, but there's something wrong with you because you're not happy. So when you read the cult books, it was for me, that was really healing, reading the cult books. This was the first one we read, this Cults in Our Midst by Margaret Singer, and that was I just flew through that thing, because it was just everything in it was just like, oh, my group did that, my group did that. So yeah, the reading about cults was really helpful. But I wish I could say the mental health support was there, but it really wasn't, sadly.
Well, what I'll do is I'll pop the information of any of those books that you recommend, and I'll put it in the description on this video on YouTube. So if anybody wants to read them, they can do. So sorry to hear you didn't get the support that you should have had. And I guess that's a bit about why you do what you're doing. So can you tell everyone about the support that you give to people that are coming out of a cult or are in one or controlling relationships?
Okay. So there were three avenues to what I've been trying to set up. The first one is the counselling, but a big part of the counselling process that I'll be doing with people is helping them understand the experience. So there'll be a lot of what we call psychoeducational stuff. So be sitting there saying, oh, here's what a narcissistic perpetrator might look like in a cult or an abusive relationship. Here's behaviours you might see. Here's how mind control works. Here's how you start developing this new identity, and kind of like I've said already, kind of normalising the experience. So exploring theories of mind control and things like that, and also exploring what how we are naturally persuaded as people, not so much even in an abusive setting. So there's another good book by Robert Cialdini, which looks at different ways that we're persuaded naturally, and it's more from like a marketing kind of side. But you'll see all that in abusive relationships and in cult groups as well. So even exploring how it's quite common or normal to be persuaded and manipulated in certain ways, because we naturally take shortcuts in our mind and trying to make decisions, and people exploit that. Just to give you a quick example, we're more persuaded by someone who we like. So when we like someone, it's easier for them to persuade us, and that's quite a normal thing. Everyone works like that, if you know what I mean. So
you can see that
in the counselling,
friendships and things like that. You can see that in friendships, can't you? And people have this problem about saying no to people as well. It gets hard. And groups, they make you like them by love bombing you. So that's how they can persuade you, because you're feeling good. You automatically assume then that what they're saying is right, and you're easier to be persuaded because they love bombing you and telling you how amazing you are all the time. So that's like a normal human process, I suppose. But so that'll be part of the recovery process, and obviously working through the trauma and things like that. And then the other thing is the training. So I've written a training course
talking about a lot of these theories of mind control and persuasion and manipulation, and just raising awareness of what a cult group actually is and how it operates and the structure and things like that. So I delivered the first training course in last month, and so that's kind of I'm going to edit that and improve that training, and we'll be delivering more of them in the future. Just a general cult awareness training, and also there was the cult exit support. So if there is any family, I mentioned this briefly already, but if there was a family, for example, who were concerned about a relative, I could help them with the research and explain to them the best ways of communicating with them while they're in the cult group, to build autonomy and to promote critical thinking. Because one of the difficult things with cults is they promote black and white thinking. So everyone outside of the group is either a sinner or evil, or they're gonna lead you astray from this path that they're on, or they're full of bad energy, or they don't understand what the group's about. So when a family member comes along and says you're in a cult, that's wrong, it's reinforcing what the group has already been teaching them, and the group will say to them, see, I told you, they're trying to lead you off the path. So there are ways to communicate with people who have been in cults, who are in cults, that kind of it is more gentle, and kind of moves away from that kind of confrontational way of communicating that actually could push them further away. So as part of that exit support, I hope to be helping people be able to communicate with the members, and also perhaps, if possible, working with facilitating interventions. So bringing the cult together with the family, or talking about improving communication between them and the member, if that's possible. But obviously cults try and isolate people from the families as well. So it's quite a complex thing to explain in a couple of minutes, but in a nutshell, really just empowering family members to communicate with the person they care about who's in the cult, and also perhaps facilitating their escape, hopefully.
Sounds like quite a big, quite dangerous thing as well, because we know that cults can be extreme in their ways as well. I had some of the questions I've asked throughout this interview have been given to me by other people out of interest and whatnot, and this one comes from a lady who has actually been through a cult experience, and she has had struggle with support after coming out of that. She's actually had to try and fund the right counselling herself, and she was asking, do you offer group or individual therapy, or both, and do you have plans for a program so that she could perhaps come onto that program?
At the moment, it's just in individual therapy. Obviously, there's a certain therapeutic element to working with the interventions with the families for the exit support, but I'm just offering individual therapy. I have been looking into setting up support groups, but the struggle with that is I don't know how it would be. I don't know how far people be prepared to travel. And are there ex-cult members that are within the catchment area for setting up like an ongoing support group? I don't know. So I'm kind of looking into that at the moment. With regards to the program thing, I have been thinking of looking at doing a perhaps 6-week course to do with coercive control, and thinking in terms of could it be like an accredited course? I've looked into accreditation. It's at the back of my mind that creating some kind of program, it just timing and seeing how things develop naturally and what opportunities arise. But that is something that is in the back of my mind as well.
So definitely watch that space then, basically. Obviously it's very new because you literally opened your doors for business like weeks ago, if weeks. So if anybody wants to connect with you, how do they find you? Tell us your website, any social media accounts you're on. Let us know how they connect with you.
The easiest thing to do is to just go to the website. So it's tothinkagain.co.uk. And then there's a link to the Facebook there, a link to LinkedIn. You can contact me through the contact page, and the phone number is on there too. So that sends you off into all the different avenues of contact. So that's the easiest way to contact me.
That's great. And I mean, I've just asked you to tell us all, but I am going to put all the information in the description on this video so everyone can just directly go there. So I've just made you say it for no reason. I do it to everyone.
Okay.
But Richard, thank you so much for talking about such an important part of coercive control as well, and the similarities between that and domestic abuse. And I can kind of relate to what you're saying. I mean, I've never been in that experience before, but some of the things that you were saying even, reminded me of what it was like to be in an abusive relationship. So it's interesting that there are similarities. And thank you everyone for watching us and having our interview and discussion, and hopefully you'll found it very helpful. It's so important to educate ourselves and learn more about these things, because really we need to be a sponge, don't we, and absorb everything we can so we can look out for our own warning signs and look out for other people as well. Abuse Talk Twitter chat. I don't know how I'm going to edit this video, but it's 8 till 9 p.m, so we might already be tweeting when this is live. But the next interview will premiere on the 5th of June at 7:30 p.m, so do join us and pop it in your diary. And once again, I want to say thank you so much for Richard, and please, if anybody feels that they need to get in touch with Richard, don't hesitate. We've had really great conversations over the last not even a couple of months yet, is it? Over the last few weeks. And, it's so nice to be able to have those conversations with you, Richard. So thank you for your time and everything.